There is something that's called la faux folie. Supposedly, these are children that died through some horrific accident to where they're demon-like children, and they appear in the shape of lights that try to get you to follow them so you'll be lost forever in the swamps.
But yeah, when you hear like scraping claws underneath the bed and it moves and you can, I was so terrified, dude. I pulled the blanket over my head. I could hear whatever it was breathing outside the sheet.
When I was a little gaffer there, we got into a car accident, hit a moose. My mom ended up under the steering wheel of the car, and she had a big hand-shaped bruise on her shoulder. It was like somebody pushed her underneath the steering wheel. My mom should have gotten decapitated. The weird part was we hit a moose, and we had a moose hanging from the rearview mirror.
The only other thing that I could think of would be a bear, but there's no bears in that area either. It's just not the right habitat for them, and when you shoot at a bear's going to move. It's going to take off for the most part. And this thing just shot them and did nothing.
This material world that you're told is bound by science and everything else, obviously science and physics are very important. There is so much more out there that is left to study, that is left to learn about.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Investigation Cryptoparalogy. Sit back, get relaxed, and crack open your favorite cold beverage as we dive deep into the abyss of what we were told couldn't possibly exist. Hello and welcome to Investigation Cryptoparalogy. Tonight we're going to be talking to Chris from Michigan about some experiences and encounters that he's had in the past and some things that he has recently gone through being disabled and trying to get on SSI.
Oh, yes.
Chris.
Well, hello. Sorry I didn't interrupt you. Well, it started out with the paranormal stuff with like, I'll say demons because I don't really have a more appropriate word to call them. But I was probably from like age 1, I'll say to like 8. And this house was like extremely haunted, like with multiple entities. There was like ghosts of, I think they were kids because there was 2 kids that burned alive in the house. And apparently, according to what my stepfather told me, that the wife at the time actually practiced actual witchcraft in the house. And well, all the time I'd come out of the room and there would be smoke throughout the whole house, and I'd look back, look again, and disappear. There'd be doors that would lock themselves. Every time at night I heard a growling and clawing underneath my bed. And at one point, my parents actually thought I clawed myself, but I did not claw myself. I don't know what clawed me, but it was not me. And then there was another occurrence where I remember my mother shaking me in the closet because she had told me a long time ago that the house fire supposedly started in the closet. Well, she had shaken me, and I came to in the closet with a lighter in my hand trying to light something on fire in the closet, and I didn't have any idea how I actually got there. And then there was a time when I was walking out to get firewood on the side of the house. I looked in the basement, and I seen the basement was in flames with like a corn shook, I guess you call it. Yeah, I seen it floating around in midair, just swinging. I looked at my stepdad. I'm like, "You see that shit?" He's like, "What?" He looked in the basement. "I don't see nothing." Like, yeah, there was something there. Oh, and then there was some other really creepy stuff that I tried to tell my parents about. Like, sometimes when I would walk down to the basement, it would flood periodically, right? And it always had this really weird, dark, rustic red to it. Oh, well, that's what they told me. To me, it looked like blood. That's what it looked like to me.
I don't know. Maybe they just didn't want you seeing what you actually saw.
Yeah, they never. Oh, and then there was this other occurrence when my mother was cooking. Well, it was like late. I think it was like 11, 12 at night. She was cooking breakfast for my stepdad when he had got home from work. And I seen this black entity shoot up her arm, and she was holding the pan of hot grease with the bacon and flipping it, right? Well, whatever it was, it caused the pan to flip up and the grease to run all down her arm.
Ooh, wow.
Boiling grease. And it pretty much, here's another really, really, well, I don't know if it's coincidental or not, but from my perspective, it probably has some correlation to the events in that house. Well, up until the time that I was 18, I still consistently had nightmares about that house, about being chased by demons, ripped in half, and shit like that. But after from 18 forward, it went away. And it always felt like I was being followed up until the point that I was 18 by something. You know, like when you get that feeling, like you feel like something's watching you.
Oh yeah, I've definitely had that feeling.
Yeah, but it was all the time.
Yeah, I don't know if I would want that all the time.
No, it's not fun.
So what did you end up doing about any of this?
Well, eventually my mom got to the point where, because later I found out that she told me when I'm like, I'll say it was like a year or two ago, that she sensed the same thing that I had seen and said stuff about in this house down there. And she got to the point where she's like, you know what, we just got to get out of here.
Yeah, I'd say get out of there.
But as the rule goes, just because you leave a possessed place does not mean you're going to leave with whatever being it is behind.
Well, I mean, yeah, because once you become, well, I don't know if you ever actually become possessed, but it sounds like you became oppressed. And if you're oppressed, well, that's just the next step to a possession. So, you have to get rid of it before you can move from place to place and it not follow, because it could be attached to you. It could have been attached to a cigarette lighter. I mean, there's really no definition there.
Oh, it clearly was attached to me for some odd reason. It loved to hover around me and screw with me all the time. I actually seen it in the shadows in the room. I would describe it as looking like a minotaur with mist for like where it's like from its waist down, and like a really muscular like minotaur upper body. But I can't say it had red eyes. I couldn't see any eyes. It was just a black shadow.
Oh, you are definitely going to give the listeners of this show nightmares tonight. I hope you know that.
Well, yeah, try living in that and like being like a 6 or 7-year-old kid going to bed at night, and your parents like, it's nothing. It's all in your imagination. Like, yeah, when you hear like scraping claws underneath the bed and it moves, and I was so terrified, dude. I pulled the blanket over my head. I could hear whatever it was breathing outside the sheet.
Ooh. Well, there you have it, folks. I mean, investigation cryptoparalogy is about things that everybody always told you could not exist. And then we're sitting here and we're listening to Chris talk, and he's telling us that, his parents keep saying, oh, don't worry about it. There's nothing there. It doesn't exist. Well, that's the epitome of what this show is all about. And I'll get back to Chris.
All right. So, oh, yes, it didn't stop at that house either. Apparently, whatever that was seemed to like following me, right? Well, when I had moved to Lapeer, Michigan with my parents after they had moved from that house, right? And when we were in Lapeer, Michigan, well, we had a dog named Sammy that had a pin in its leg. My mom said it was rats in the basement, mind you, before I get into the details of this, but I don't think so, because I could feel an ominous aura from whatever that was. There was a bunch of them. Well, she had told me that I had to crawl into the crawl space, which was like a 1.5 foot crawl space, because the dog had gotten in there, right? Well, I had crawled in there and I looked, and all I seen was red eyes, multiple, looking back at me as I crawled into the crawl space.
Oh hell no!
Yeah, dude, I was terrified. I grabbed the dog and pulled the dog out as quick as I could. Well, when I pulled the dog out, the dog's eyes were gone, and so was like a 6.5 inch pin that was in its leg because it had got hit by a car. The pin was nowhere to be found.
Wait a minute. You said the dog's eyes were gone?
Yes, the dog's eyes were completely gone.
The literal hell.
Yeah. People are like, you didn't really see any of this shit. You're making it up. No, I wish I was.
Well, you know what they say: truth is way stranger than fiction.
Well, there's a saying that actually goes with that. It's like fiction has to make sense. Reality doesn't.
This is true. Damn,
Oh,
the dog's eyes are gone, man. That's
Yeah.
just creepy as hell.
Like I see, here's one of the way my brain works while like we're playing the scenario. I'm like, okay, let's say it was rat. What rat could pull a 6 inch pin that was the size of my pinky as an adult out of the dog's leg?
Splinter from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, maybe.
I'm like, this doesn't add. Oh, and then there was like, remember what I told you? I had fell down the stairs and I had cracked my head open.
Yeah.
Well, I never told anybody else this, but when I was going down the stairs, I swear to God, I felt a hand grab my foot before I fell down the stairs. Like my foot got stuck for no reason, and then I tried to pull it, and then I was down the stairs.
Sounds like the entity that was messing with you was just doing it for pure fun.
Oh yeah, they were definitely loving tormenting me. Like I don't know if they're still around me now. I can't really sense them, but that's not to say that they're not around.
Yeah. Who knows? You know, everything that you've been going through recently with, you know, disability and everything else, it could very well possibly be them.
Yeah, I've also read about that. They said, historically speaking, schizophrenia was also tied to actually possession of demonic origin.
Well, we may need to get you exercised then.
You know, and I swear to God, I tell people this, they think I'm joking. I'm like, no, and from my perspective, mind you, there is a literal demon inside my brain.
Oh, I believe that wholeheartedly. I mean, I've seen, well, the movie itself was made a while back. Zach Bagans from Ghost Adventures had it made about the house that he had bought. I forget where it was now, but it was the demon house. And one of the psychic mediums said that when he looked into the house, not in the house, not being actually in the house at that point in time, but when he, you know, did his astral projection or whatever he did and actually looked into the house, he said he's seen a 12-foot shadow figure that then came into view. And as it came into view, it was 12 feet tall, had horns like a goat, and the face of, I think it's Baphomet, the goat demon face that everybody always associates with Satan or Beelzebub.
Yeah, which is also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to state also that historically it's tied to. I forget what it was, but it's the pagan god of.
You're talking about
harvest.
You're talking about
Yeah.
Samhain.
No, it's the ball, like the goat character. I forget what his name is, but he's called something else in
well, yeah,
pagan mythology.
It's written out as Samhain, but it's pronounced Samhain.
Oh, well.
It's weird. I mean, I've heard a lot of people say it a lot of different ways, but yeah.
Oh, and I also looked into what I seen as a kid, as an adult, trying to figure out what it was. And the closest representation that I could come up with from research, looking into it, was a jinn.
Oh, no shit.
Yeah, which, as it turns out, and this is where it gets real creepy, if you look into the mythology behind the jinns were strongly tied to people that practice black magic.
Okay, so have you been practicing black magic, not telling anyone?
No, but the person my oh yes, that's another thing. I don't, it ain't relevant to like what happened to me, but it shows that something definitely did not like this person that was practicing witchcraft, right? Well, my stepdad had told me that his wife, okay, her husband at the time was pulling like a 3 foot tree or like tree trunk out of the ground with a backhoe. Well, he pulled it up. She came out, the chain snapped, and it ripped the back of her head off.
Holy shit.
And then there was another occurrence that my stepdad told me about that happened to her. That she was outside a bar. And she had a Corvette at the time. She said people just all of a sudden seen these long ass metal rods just float up out of nowhere and just shoot through the back window of her car. Like, you know, I would have, I'm just saying that usually people, when they say they practice witchcraft, they probably are like not actual.
Oh no,
Like,
no.
but that seems like that person legitimately practiced actual witchcraft.
Well, yeah, they ripped open a portal to somewhere that, you know, maybe they shouldn't have ripped it open. I mean, you know, there are things in the veil, and when I say in the veil, for anybody who's listening that don't understand what the veil is basically the very, very paper thin wall between us and basically a nightmare world. Now, some Christians look at it as, you know, the veil is between the wall between us and heaven is the veil, but that's not true on any level. What's actually on the other side of the veil is death. And if you could pierce the veil, the TV show Stranger Things kind of did, but it's not an upside down. It's nothing like that. There's not, you know, ash floating everywhere. Anybody who's actually had a near death experience has actually experienced the other side of the veil. They've pierced the veil. For us to actually be able to pierce the veil from the living side, there's no real concrete science behind it right now. But some people who dabble in black magic or, you know, voodoo, they can actually come up with a spell if they know how to do so to actually pierce it. And I've heard reports, I've seen reports, I've read reports of people who have actually pierced the veil. And over there, you know, is where it's probably where everything in Greek mythology came about with the centaurs and the minotaurs, the flying griffins. There are things on the other side of the veil that would literally scare you to death. And I mean, scare, heart stop, done, dead. Again, truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah. Oh, you know, it's another funny misconception that people associate, like Christian in general, with Armageddon. Armageddon doesn't actually mean the end. If people actually look into it, it means the lifting of the veil.
Yep.
And I've watched a lot of interesting videos, like on the particular topic we're talking about, which, you know, they may have been fake, they may have not. But there's some weird shit in this world.
Oh yeah. Have you heard the shit that they've been finding on Skinwalker Ranch down in near the Four Corners?
Oh yeah.
Oh, I mean recently, not in the past. I can't remember the guy's last name. His first name is Brandon, but he's a multi-billionaire, whatever. He actually recently bought the property, and he had, you know, the History Channel. He talked to the History Channel, and he had, you know, the cameras come in and everything. So they're doing a little series. Well, it was a mini series to start. Now it's actually going to be an actual season by season series, and they're not editing anything, dude. They're not cutting anything out. I mean, what you see is what it was when it was recorded. And, you know, the legends of don't dig on the property and, you know, everything else, all the legends of everything you've heard, they're actually showing, you know, this is what happens when we dig. It's not very fun. This is what happens at night sometimes when we look up at the mesa, the friggin' side of the mountain, and I shit you not, lights up. It illuminates itself.
I don't know if this would be considered a paranormal story, but it has relation to that.
Okay.
A while ago, I forget what age I was, but me and my ex's friend, he was talking about us going to this haunted place that had this tree that supposedly would make you feel deathly ill if you put your hand on the tree because it was supposedly haunted. This is where it gets weird. Okay, so the night before we were going to go there, I had a dream that I was riding along this dirt trail that had a like 8 foot metal barbed wire fence to the right of me, and like the forest was on the left, but it was cut back by at least like 12 feet. So there was like grass. And I'm riding on there. I see this huge ass black wolf out in the distance. I'm like, well, that's terrifying. Good thing it's over there, and I'm over here. I don't feel threatened. So I keep riding the bike, and all of a sudden it jumps out of the forest, slams me off the bike, and fights with me. And I'm like, okay, cool. I know I'm dreaming. I can win this. So I like completely beat the crap out of the wolf. I'm like, yeah, I won. Okay, I look down at the wolf. All of a sudden, the blood just starts flowing in reverse, going back into the wolf, right? And I mean, this doesn't sound relevant, but I'll get to that. Well, I had woken up because I said, screw that. I can't beat that. Well, later after that, I had asked the guy, I'm like, just by chance, we wouldn't have to walk down a really narrow path with a 8 foot barbed wire fence to the right and a forest to the left to get where that tree was, would we? He's like, yeah, how'd you know?
Oh, hell no.
Yeah, I took that as a sign. I'm like, nope, not going there.
Yeah, you were talking about trees, placing your hand on a tree. What I'm about to say had nothing to do with placing your hand on a tree. When I used to live on the East Coast in a place called Cratter's Mountain, there was a tree, and this tree is where a girl had been, maimed, strangled, other things done to her, and then she was hung. And I kept hearing the story, go to this tree on this day at this time, and you can watch. The noose is still hanging. I mean, it doesn't have a noose on it anymore. It's just a rope now, or it's maybe not even. Tree might not even be there now, but this is happened when I was younger. But you can watch the rope swing and you'll hear her scream. Well, for one, nobody's going to be able to scream with a noose around their neck and being choked. So I just kind of thought that odd. So we go one night on the particular night. I think it was like 12:15 or something like that. Who the hell came up with the time? I have no idea. And we waited, and we waited. There was no air moving whatsoever. And then the rope started to swing. And it wasn't so much of a scream as if you could imagine what, a person would sound like with a noose around their neck, real, real tight, and trying to scream, that gurgling.
Mm-hmm. You're still there, right? It didn't disconnect, did it?
Okay, I'm back.
All right. I was wondering what happened.
No, I actually muted my mic for a second. But if you can imagine that sound, then it was that sound, but it was extremely loud. I mean, like she was right in your ear. I mean, the ground rumbled. You could feel, a vibration in the ground, and the tree just lit up like it was in flames. And it happened for like a few seconds and then done.
Yeah, that's like, okay, I gotta leave now.
Yeah, I really didn't know what to do at that point. So I just stood there, and my buddy's standing there, and his buddy is just bawling. And now we're talking about football players, man, really big guys in high school. And this dude is just standing there. He's not moving. His arms are to his side, but he's just bawling, tears just running down his face. And we were both ready to run. And we just looked at him and said, can we go now? He didn't move. Can we go now? He didn't move. And then he grabbed his throat. And I'm like, what the shit is he doing? And he's, coughing and gagging and, I guess trying to speak. And he moved his hands away from his throat. And there was a perfect outline of a rope rope burn around his throat. So we grabbed him and dragged his ass to the car.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like fun.
No, not at all.
Like, hey, want to go sign up for that? No, I think I passed on that. That's another thing that most people like. Ghosts ain't real. Well, for one, from my experience personally, they are very real, and so are the evil versions of whatever they are. Two, we cannot hurt them. They can hurt us. That kind of puts us at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, I could totally agree with that one.
Like, but it's a ghost, dude. Why are you scared? Because I'm logical.
Right? Now,
Like, if you had seen the shit that I did as a kid, you would understand.
man, I've been through some shit in my life, but I would not want to see the shit you went through as a kid. I mean, maybe from a distance, like watching it on TV or some shit, but fuck no, not up close.
I've had dreams that were even weirder than that shit. I'm like, where the freaking hell did that come from?
I think there's two things that really happened to me in my past that the tree thing kind of scared me. But then again, I was a football player and I was drunk and everything else. So, just get that out there. So I kind of wasn't feeling anything, but what happened to him just kind of makes that feeling run up your spine like it's time to go. But the other two real things that really happened, well, hell, everything that happened to me was real, but that really scared the living shit out of me was one, I was sitting just like I'm sitting here talking to you, but we're recording a show. But I'm sitting in a living room with a bunch of other people. I'm talking, when I say a bunch, think about it, man, how people used to party back in the day. A bunch of fucking people, and we were all stoned. And some guy starts talking about this house is haunted, and I'm like, what? He's like, it's haunted. I'm like, oh, you're full of shit, man. Ghosts don't exist. And the more we kept talking and everything, and then people started leaving, and it got down to like three of us. Well, when it got down to three of us, that's when shit started happening. Cabinet doors started swinging open and shit. Bathroom door was slamming. Front door kept opening and closing. And I don't mean opening just a little bit, so it wasn't the wind. It was opening all the way up and slamming so hard that it was rattling the glass in the door. And then I said, yeah, fuck this. I said, I'm out of here, man. I said, I don't know what you're pulling. You've got something on pneumatic switches or some shit like that. And I stood up. And when I stood up, everybody else was still sitting down. Something picked my big ass up and threw me across the room into the wall. But when I hit the wall, I didn't just slide down. I hit the wall and I was stuck there. I stayed there.
Yeah.
That was not fun. And then it dropped me, and then everything quit happening, and I never went back to that guy's house.
It's another interesting thing that I seen in that house that I never told anybody about. There was on the when you came down the stairs, right? You'd walk down the stairs of the basement. It was filed around, and then you'd like walk around to the left and end up at the basement, and I don't know what direction it was. I'm trying to give like a idea of what it would look like. Well, they had like these pipes and stuff in the center. There was a furnace in the center. Well, on the back far wall, it was almost like a luminescent orange. It looked like it was bleeding, and it was a pentagram.
Say what?
Yeah. It was a pentagram on the wall that looked like it was a luminescent orange that had blood coming out of it. Which I had brought it up to my parents. I'm like, what is that on the wall? They're like, what are you talking about? We don't see nothing.
I don't know what to tell you about that one, buddy.
Yeah, that was in the same area where I seen the flames and the sickle floating around. Yeah, so that's interesting.
Yeah, so you had told me, some of this in the past, but you never went into any great detail about it. Holy shit.
Yeah, people are like, you couldn't really go through it. You're just making this up. You're pulling my leg. I'm like, no, I'm really not.
Well, I can't say that. I mean, I've known you for a long time, and you know, there have been many, many times when your grandmother and grandfather were still alive, and you were still living with them, and we'd be in a voice chat program, and you'd leave the mic open and go do something for your grandmother or whatever, and I could actually hear shit going on in your bedroom. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I don't have it anymore, or maybe I have it on a disc or something. But
Yeah, I
I had
remember you
actually,
mentioned that.
I actually recorded in Ventrilo one night the things that came through your mic. And I mean, it was just, it sounded like the sounds of hell, dude. I mean, it was, and then what spoke, and I threw my headset off because I didn't, me saying this is, it sounds kind of weird, but I didn't want it coming through to me. And there's people that said that, well, things can't do that. And that's entirely not accurate, because there have been, paranormal investigators, one setting halfway across the country, or one group rather, and then the other group on the other side of the country investigating a haunted whatever. And the people on the other side of the country actually felt what was going on the other side of the country, because the entity was actually traveling through. Yeah, I snatched my headphones off. I didn't want that shit coming in my house.
Yeah, I never heard it.
Really nice, deep voice saying something to the effect of if you'll die or something like that. I'm like, oh,
Yeah, I remember that. I never heard anything in that room, but when you mentioned that, I always had a perception that something was in there with me. So
yeah, but why did it choose me to speak to? I mean, hell, you were there with it all the time.
well, I've had, over the years, I was used to whatever it was messing with me, so I kind of learned how to block out what was going on.
No, never again.
Oh, also in relation to here's another weird thing, which makes absolutely no sense at all. So I would definitely classify it as paranormal. Like, for the majority of people that I talk about these stories to, weird shit starts to happen around me whenever I in-depth detail tell people about what happened.
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen to you, now, because I mean, we've had these conversations. Maybe the entity that's followed you around for all these years understands that, Chris and Will have had these conversations before. Will is believer, so I don't have to do anything to Chris to make Will believe.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of what it is. It's like, if I tell people that and they don't believe me, well, that thing's like, oh yeah, well, I'll just show you. Here you go. Like, for example, I was telling this one kid named Ricky about these stories, right? And he was saying something, was getting on my nerves because he kept interrupting me. I was trying to tell him about all this stuff. He said, why did I hit him with a penny? Right. It's funny as shit. Okay. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about, dude? I didn't throw a penny at you. It's like, dude, the penny just flew from over there. I didn't throw it. Like, it flew. I swear to God, it floated up and flew straight at me and hit me in the face. Like, yeah, I didn't do that.
That's funny. I'm not saying, that anything that happened to you is funny, but that's just funny for somebody not to believe they get smacked with a penny.
Well, I don't know if this would be paranormal or a psychic phenomenon, but they're both kind of closely linked. This one time in that house with my grandparents, I had gotten into the shower. I'm like, it'd be great. I'm thinking in my head, it'd be great if the water would just turn on so I didn't have to turn over in there and turn it on. And all of a sudden, it just on by itself.
Well, so
I'm like, well, that's interesting.
Well, so maybe your entities aren't as bad as they appear. I mean, maybe if you don't talk to them enough, they get pissed off and lonely, and of course, then they start fucking with you. But you look at it this way: you're never alone. You can actually.
Oh no, I'm definitely not. I can feel things around me right now talking about it.
Well, I'm just saying, you could say that, you might go through a little bit of depression and, mental anguish and whatever, but you're never alone. You always have. And some people would say your imaginary friend, but we all know it's not imaginary. So you always have your little friend.
Well, that's another thing, since they diagnosed me with what they diagnosed me with, schizophrenia or schizoaffective. Makes me question, is like, did I actually really see any of this stuff as a kid, or have I had this my whole life and I was actually seeing things that weren't actually there? But when you get physically clawed on your leg by something, that kind of tells you that's pretty real.
Well, so no. You say you were physically clawed. Let me ask you a question. How
It
many
was three
claw marks
claws.
were? That is the
Three.
mark. That's three. Any time it comes in multiples of three is the mocking of the Holy Trinity.
Yeah, so that was definitely demonic, whatever it was.
Now, see if I could have everybody like you that could answer the question before I even finish asking the question. I'm like, let me ask you a question about the markings. How, and I didn't even get how many were there, and you go three, because every demonic oppression that I have ever heard of or seen with my own eyes, anytime anybody gets scratched anywhere on their body, it's always in three.
Yep. Always.
Unless you get that, that one demon out there, Fred from off in the corner somewhere that just doesn't understand how things work, and then they end up four. Oh, and believe me, there are demons. I mean, demons are real, people, regardless of what your view on them are. And they're not the demons from the Bible. They're not fallen angels. They are abominations. The thing with demons, I mean, it's an actual creature, and it exists on the other side of the veil. Now, that's the whole thing. They can pierce the veil. We can't, but they can. And when they come over and they attach themselves to you, then they're here indefinitely.
I came up with an interesting theory on that. Okay, you ever heard of numerology?
Yeah.
Well, according to numerology, I am a cusp of magic.
Huh.
Which apparently, as all the stuff I was reading on it says, is like the most in tune to the spirit world. So I'm like, well, maybe
it doesn't bother me.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm just saying maybe I'm like creating a void wherever I exist, if that actually is factual.
I don't see how it couldn't be factual. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands of people throughout history that have done that. I mean, they didn't so much, they weren't dabbling in black magic or whatever. It's just who they were and where they were in history or in time. They were, not a void, but they were a open portal for things to come through.
Yeah, and on topic of that, I actually had some like that same pagan friend that wanted to go to that haunted tree or house or whatever. He told me, he's like, dude, he's like, you just draw in energy from everything. You don't even know you're doing it. I'm like, okay.
And there was one other thing I wanted to touch on. Now, they diagnosed you with schizophrenia, right?
Yeah, among other things.
Well, among other things, but that's the major thing. And a lot of people, when they hear the word schizophrenic or somebody has schizophrenia, they automatically think the person is out of their mind. I hope people are paying attention and listening to Chris, because he is the most intelligent person that I have ever met that has ever been diagnosed with schizophrenia. He is not nuts. He is not crazy. Because when I'm not talking and he's not talking, he's not rambling. Most schizophrenics ramble.
I ramble occasionally, but it doesn't happen a lot. Like I get tongue tied sometimes, but not all the time. Pretty coherent most of the time.
I don't mean rambling like that. I mean just sitting and talking to yourself and repeating the same shit over and over.
Oh, I just sat in water. My butt's all wet.
I could cut that out, but I'm going to leave that one in there.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
Yeah, my whole idea for this podcast is, I don't want to do a whole lot of editing into it. And since I'm, uploading each show directly to my website, I don't have to worry about, people saying fuck or shit or damn or anything like that. Any of the words that would normally be cut out or bleeped out, I'm not bleeping it out. I want people to feel comfortable and just be able to talk. And I'm not going to edit it out later, because then you lose the emotion and the feeling of what actually happened during the recording.
Yeah, you can tell if someone's being authentic by usually the wording they use and the tone and the depth. Yeah.
Yeah.
But on topic, remember like I said that like my mom had got her arm burned with that grease.
Yeah.
There is something that is in my memory that I cannot make any logical sense of. I remember looking up and seeing her from the perspective of me being a kid, but I also have a memory of seeing it from the perspective of whatever that was that did it to her.
What you talking about?
Well, okay. So the thing that went up her arm, right? I have a memory of seeing it from the perspective of that thing and seeing it from the perspective of myself as a child in my memory.
Oh, to be able to have the Minority Report technology, to be able to hook into your eyeballs and hook into your mind and see these things. I'd love to be able to do that and broadcast that.
The point I'm trying to make is that I don't understand like what is my brain like. I've talked to a psychiatrist about it. She said, yeah, the human brain does that because you felt guilty for it happening because you were bugging her as a child. I'm like, maybe. I don't think so though.
But why automatically blame you for it? I mean, hell, you didn't have anything to do with it.
No, my mom said she felt the same presence when that pan of hot grease got flipped up and ran down her arm.
Huh.
And it was ramping up. And it is factual that these type of entities ramp up. They don't start out full blown. They progressively get worse and worse and worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was talking about with the guys' cabinets and stuff opening and closing. I mean, it could be you are correct. It could be as slight as, okay, so you smoke, so you lay your cigarette lighter down somewhere, and then all of a sudden it's not there.
Oh, thanks for reminding me. You ain't gonna believe this story. And this was recent. Okay, you remember when I was telling you about my grandma was pretty much going through the process of passing on because eventually she died.
Yeah.
Well, okay, I forget what I was looking for, but I was there with my aunt. I'm like, I swear to God, I had just had this right here. It was right there. Why is it not there? Right? Then we looked all over for it, walked back there, looked down, it was there.
Oh.
So clearly, in my opinion, that was something messing with me.
Well, I would say it was in the last place you looked, but it was in the first place you looked.
Yeah, I literally would have, if they're like, oh, you just missed it. It was like in your peripheral view, you didn't. No, I literally looked right down where it should have been. It was completely gone. I came back, looked again, and then it was there.
That's messed up.
Yeah, like I have never actually seen physical objects just completely disappear. But that is not out of possibility because I have watched documentation stuff on that it actually does happen with entities like that.
Oh yeah, and there's these so-called experts. There are no experts in the paranormal field. There's no experts in the Sasquatch, Bigfoot field, or any other field to do with anything, crypto or anything else. Now, people may have been around it for a long time, but there are no experts because we can't get mainstream science involved. So, but there are people who actually say that what is it, poltergeists are just a manifestation of your mental energy. Okay, well, I've seen poltergeists do some things that I never even thought were possible. So,
I was going to tell you this. I never got around to it. I had found this story about this child that was, I think it was in the 1800s. It was supposedly supposed to be possessed by like a demon.
Yeah.
The trippiest part of that whole story, that shit sounded exactly like when I was a kid.
You never know, man. Sometimes people are reincarnated.
Well, and it was weird because the minute they like put the child under, all the shit just completely stopped happening.
I was just saying, along the lines of maybe when that child finally died and then you were born, then the entity that was, associated with that child just followed the soul. Maybe you are actually the child.
There's another interesting thing that I learned through research because, I like to look into like the paranormal werewolves and all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Apparently, the largest amount of werewolf sightings in the world is in Michigan.
Yeah, isn't it Bray Road in Michigan?
Yeah, it's up there by that one forest. Yeah.
Yep. Go on YouTube and look up the Bray Road Beast and see that big bastard that comes barreling out of the woods at those people.
It'd be interesting to get my friend Chloe on here too, because she believes in the supernatural and does like spells and crap. I think she's what word did she call it? Well, she had a clan, like how we played the one game. Well, she had a clan on that game that was called Bruges.
Yeah,
like Brujah or whatever. I just called her a gypsy because that's what type of character I would call her, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, she has like a lot of stuff like that. She's like, yeah, I've seen some pretty weird crap too.
So do you have a way of getting in contact with her?
Kind of. I don't know if she would be up for it, but there's this one time, right? I was talking to her about this stuff, and she strongly believed in it. And she's like, just because I was trying to like project to see if she could see that, like the thing that I seen. I tried to give like a mental projection of it.
Mm-hmm.
And she's talking to me, and she's like, what the fuck is that thing? I'm like, what thing? She's like, that big ass black fucking thing out in front of my house. What the fuck is that? I only succeeded once, but apparently she's, according to her, which I'm going to assume she wasn't lying, she actually seen what I was trying to project that was after me all that time. Which, sounds completely far-fetched, but they have actually did documentation with the military on like remote viewing and all that other stuff. And it actually does work.
Oh, that I know all too well.
Like, I understand how outlandish everything that I say sounds, but just because it sounds completely unbelievable.
Well, it may sound like that to some people, but people that actually frequent, this podcast and other podcasts like the Bump podcast with Bo Kennedy or Sasquatch Chronicles with Wes Germer. I mean, Sasquatch Chronicles it's in its title. It's about Sasquatch, and I've seen them, so I know that they exist. I know other people who have seen them, so they're out there. They exist. It's just mainstream science won't finally come up like they did with the silverback gorilla and go, okay, it's a thing. Now with the Bump podcast, his is the believers of the unexplained monsters and paranormal, right? So Bump, and he basically, he touches on a little bit of everything. Psychic mediums, paranormal, Sasquatch, angels, demons, yada yada yada. Which is, basically, what we're doing here, but instead of where on most podcasts, they pick and choose who they're going to talk to depending on, now I know Bo doesn't do this, but I know other people do, they pick and choose who they're going to talk to based on how valid the story or the claim seems. Mm-hmm. And the way I look at it is even if somebody goes, oh, hey, I was abducted by Elvis Presley, I want to hear the story because somewhere in there's going to be a lot of truth. Now, he may have gotten abducted, he or she may have gotten abducted by aliens that projected themselves to them as they were Elvis Presley to not scare them as bad. So I want to hear the whole story. I'm not going to discount somebody just because, okay, I was abducted by Elvis Presley.
Well, that also, if people understand how psychology works, once you see something of that level, your brain completely stops understanding how to process what's going on. Which I'm looked into the topic of that because I was trying to I thought maybe I was crazy. That's I'm like I told my friend before, like I would much rather believe that I am completely crazy, opposed to the fact that I actually seen this stuff and experienced it.
Well, according to doctors, you are certifiably nuts.
Yeah, pretty much.
But at the same, in the same time frame,
Oh.
as you said earlier, that seeing these things can actually cause schizophrenia.
Well, and also on topic of that, did you know that they also did research into like the vibration that all people emit?
Oh
Right.
yeah.
Well, they said that people that are schizophrenic vibrate at a completely different frequency than regular people do.
So you're saying that you don't vibrate at 54 kilohertz like everybody else?
No, I don't know what I do, but they said people that are schizophrenic and they have stuff like that, they actually vibrate at a different frequency than regular people.
So in that instance, then infrasound, whether it be used by the government, the military, anything extraterrestrial or anything terrestrial, would not affect you because infrasound actually vibrates at it's a vibration of the same frequency as the human body.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't affect me at all.
That's awesome. I'd like to take you out in the woods sometime. Find this out
Test
for
it?
real. Oh yeah, test it.
It'd be pretty funny if you like put a fatal dose and I'm just standing there like, is this supposed to be doing something?
Well, no. If I take you out, take you out to in the woods here, and to an area that's a known hotspot for Sasquatch. And a lot of people around here have actually seen them there. Sasquatches have actually been people have reported for them to use infrasound on animals. You can see it happening just like tigers do. It's a low tone growl, that growl or something that is emitted from the body that'll stun an animal. And I mean, I've seen them do it to deer and elk, and other people have seen them do it to deer, elk, bear, anything else. I'd like to take you out there and just set you on a stump somewhere and leave you out there under a camera, and I'll be close by, but not real close, and just see if they could use the infrasound on you, because it's from reports that I've gotten when somebody gets hit with infrasound, it disorients them. Now, I know you've probably seen the pictures of like Sasquatch on, blob squatch, what they call it, because you can't really see any detail. Well, it makes a lot of sense, because if they're actually able and using infrasound effectively, it's going to mess with electronics and everything else. So as they're walking off and you take a picture through your viewfinder, it's clear. When the picture is actually taken, the camera is being affected by that. So the camera, internally shaking, and it's blurry as hell. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Use you as a test.
On that whole topic of, like they said, that like people are schizophrenic, vibrated at a different frequency. They also said that also might actually explain how they end up seeing things that other people don't see.
Well, you can already see it as a child, and then as you grow older, that side of your brain locks off.
Well, I don't think mine ever. I mean, I can't see stuff like that now. Well, okay. Well, how do I word this? It's like when I do experience seeing things, it's usually like shadow entities, flashes of light, fast-moving objects, stuff like that. Which my doctor was talking to me about. He's like, "Well, it doesn't seem to affect you much." I'm like, "Well, that's because I'm used to it." But there has been occurrences where I've been sitting here and I could have swore, like, not like, how do I word it? Like, not like normally I would see something move out of the corner of my eye and I'd like, oh, well, I'm just seeing crap again, right? But I was standing outside the door of my uncle's house and I could have swore I seen the shadow of a full-size person go around the corner. It scared the shit out of me.
Oh, yeah, shadow figures.
And even my other friend, she's like, given the fact that we have a long Indian heritage, you might not actually be schizophrenic. You might actually be seeing things.
You may actually be a seer and not schizophrenic.
Yeah.
But modern medicine, because modern medicine doesn't take into account that these people still do exist, they're going to classify it as the only thing that they have to reference it against, which is schizophrenia.
Yeah. Oh, which also is interesting. I looked into the actual meaning of the word. Do you know what the actual meaning of schizophrenia actually comes from?
No, I've never looked it up.
It actually comes from Greek, meaning split mind.
Huh.
Yeah, I'm like, well, that's interesting. And they also said, and you'd probably agree with this since you've known me for a while. They said pretty much what makes schizophrenia a problem is it makes the person's brain just overly active all the time. And I've been told by friends numerous times, it's like, Jesus, do you ever stop planning and thinking? No, I don't. My brain is consistently going.
Yeah, that's why I actually have to periodically sometimes. I take Ativan, for high anxiety, but sometimes I actually take it to go to sleep because I cannot shut my brain off.
Yeah, that's my problem. Like that's why I have reduced sleep, which apparently is also a characteristic of someone that has schizophrenia. Doctor's like, you need to get normal sleep. I'm like, you're not listening. 5 hours is normal sleep for me.
Well, if you go to sleep and you're tired and you wake up, you're refreshed, that's plenty of sleep. The human body, from a scientific standpoint, the human body is not supposed to get any more than 4 hours of sleep anyway. Where doctors saying people need 8 hours of continuous sleep, and now they're saying 10 hours of continuous sleep, is beyond me, because the longer the body is asleep, unless you're sick, if you're sick, the longer you're asleep, the more time the body has to process and heal. But if you're not sick, the longer you sleep, the more damage you actually do to your body, because when you're asleep, your muscles actually start to retribute just a tiny bit. Just like when people are in a coma.
Yeah. Also, on that topic, did you know that people also atrophy their muscles really quickly in space also?
Well, yeah, because there's no gravity.
Yeah. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, astronauts been in space for 6 years, comes home, can't walk. Why? Well, because their muscles atrophy.
Like, I don't know if you've ever touched on it on your thing, but it's another interesting topic is, it was popular a little while ago, but I still find it interesting because from my personal experience, I don't know if it's paranormal or whatever, but there was this thing they had, it was called the Mandela effect. They tried to write it off as people were having mismatching memories of things, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, a good example of this, since if you pay it, are you into cars or no?
I'm into anything.
Okay, well, this is okay. You remember the original Volkswagen logo?
Yes.
It was a V and a W right below it with no gap between the V and the W.
Right.
Yeah. Now, if you look, it says history is saying that it always had a space between the V and the W.
No.
Yeah, that's what I said. Like, no, hell no. That ain't what it was. I race on games all the time. I've looked at it on the screen every time it booted up. It never had a space. And all of a sudden, bam, it had a space.
Well, here you go. I got
what the hell?
Okay. Now, I know you're old enough to remember the child's book, The Berenstain Bears.
Yeah.
Okay. And they're trying to say, now, the original spelling, the last part of it, right? The stain was Stain, Berenstain Bears. They are trying to now say that it was either spelled Berenstein, like, what was it, a German last name, Stein, being Stein, or Steen, a Jewish name of Stene. And I'm like, no, I actually have, like 3 or 4 of them out in the shed in a tote. And it's the Berenstain, like a stain on a piece of cloth. The Berenstain Bears. What?
You know what also makes that whole the Volkswagen logo even more interesting? Is okay. Well, according to history, right, what we remember should not exist, right? Well, someone actually found a Volkswagen that had the logo that we said was always the logo.
Right.
Yeah, they looked at that. It's like, look at this. According to this should not exist. Like, look it up right on the internet right here. It says it always had a space. And it was really weird because I had a guy that said he worked at Volkswagen, that he's seen it change. It's like, what's the point I'm trying to make here with this? It's a lot of things ain't what they seem.
Oh no.
And apparently reality can change whenever it wants to.
Well, yeah, reality is ever changing.
But for it to change like that is just mind blowing. Like, what is happening when that like event happens?
Oh man, I can remember movies from my childhood that I know exist, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you look them up on the internet. Oh no, that was a 30-minute skit from another movie, or I'm like, no, that was like a 2-hour movie. The hell?
There was another one like that. It was there's something about like there's a movie that's supposed to have some guy playing like Sinbad.
Yeah, Sinbad was in a movie called Shazam.
Yeah,
He was a genie, and everybody was like,
yeah,
no,
I remember
no,
that.
you're talking about the big tall basketball player that played in Kazam," and I'm like, no, we're not talking about him. We're talking it's Shazam, Shazam, and he was a genie, and it was Sinbad. Sinbad himself even said, "Yes, I was in a movie called Shazam. I'm not proud of it, but I was broke at the time, so we made the movie." And everybody on the internet's, "Oh no, it doesn't exist. It doesn't exist." So I contacted my aunt, I was like, "Jean, do you still have all of Josh's movies?" Her grandson, and she said yes. Well, I said, so go through them and see if you find a movie called Shazam, and if you do, take a picture of it, email it to me. And she did, and I went on to Facebook and I said, "Look, all you goofy bastards, Sinbad, Shazam, it exists."
You know what's another interesting one like that on top of movies? Okay, when I was a kid, we had this. It wasn't a Walt Disney version of The Little Mermaid, right? It was like I don't remember who made it, but it was a version of The Little Mermaid that actually showed like her being topless throughout the whole freaking thing.
Yeah, and she dies at the end of it. That was a Grimm Brothers movie.
Well, I don't know that, but I'm just saying, like, for the movie that I seen as a kid, I looked for it even on the internet, but I was trying to show people that the original idea of The Little Mermaid was not nearly as innocent.
No,
I could never find the print of that movie. It's like it never existed.
you won't either. That's just like nobody will ever know the truth about Walt Disney and all the shit he was into, but that's for another show.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of any other weird occurrences that happened. Oh, okay, yeah, I forgot one. My mom told me that I had called or fell down the stairs in that house, and it was in Pontiac, Michigan, but it had all that weird haunting crap going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, she said that I fell down the stairs all the time. Well, what was weird for me is I could remember it felt like something was stopping me from like hitting really hard at the bottom of the stairs, which is interesting.
So your mom was basically saying you were a clumsy child.
Yeah, I suppose.
I wouldn't really say that you were a clumsy child. You were just a very unfortunate child.
Yeah, that you could imagine the damage that whole eyeless dog did to me for years.
Dude, the damage that eyeless dog did to me when you told me about it, I can imagine.
And here's what makes it worse. Like when I tell the story, you're probably assuming I was like maybe 2-3 feet away from the dog's face. No, it was like right like 4 inches from my head when I pulled it out and seen the dog had no eyes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Nope.
My mom's like, it was probably rats. No. Well, maybe because the rats were pretty big up there. But
okay, so was the dog alive or dead? Was the dog alive or dead?
Oh, it was dead as a doornail. It was stiff when I pulled it out.
Okay.
You know what's also really weird is like my mom said that when she wanted me to go down there to see what would happen, she heard a bunch of loud ass banging against the bottom of the floor where the dog was in the crawl space. I mean, maybe the dog was like fighting whatever it was, but I can't really see any a rat or multiple rats slamming a dog upward against the floor. And it was loud, like really loud. Like if you were to body slam me onto your floor, loud with me hitting the floor.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know what that was. I was like, oh, this is rats. Yeah, I don't think so. She also told me later that house up there also had stories of it was haunted by an older man that had died in the house. I had nightmares about that house even. Like any house that I've had been in that was haunted, I've had nightmares about. Really weird.
I really hate to hear about the nightmares, man.
Oh yeah, it's like people are like, why don't you like sleeping? Well, if you see the crap, like pretty much, you know how when you watch a Stephen King movie, and the movie's playing along, you're like, oh well, it ain't too bad. And then all of a sudden it starts getting weird. You're like, what the fuck's going on here?
Right?
Yeah, that's a lot of my dreams are like that. It'll start out all normal, and then I'm going along and start getting fucking freaky. Like, okay, for example, here's something that ain't relevant to the paranormal stuff, but it's weird. Like, this is the type of crap I dream about. Okay, I woke up in the middle of this field, and there was like a road down the center, and I'm like, oh, I just went to sleep. I just realized that I was dreaming in the dream, right? So I'm like, okay, I'm dreaming. Well, let's do this. Car pulls up. I get in the car.
Yeah.
I'm like, where am I? Guy looks at me, goes, oh, you're dead. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm dead. I just went to sleep. I can't be dead. He's like, oh, well, would you like to wake up then? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, sure. And I woke up. I'm like, what the hell is that?
Dude, that's just weird. That is completely weird.
I got to thinking about it. Like, you know what? Maybe I should write movies from my dream. That would be some really entertaining. What the hell is going on?
Oh, definitely. So, for the listeners out there, anybody who might be disabled or trying to get on disability or SSI, SSA, or anything like that, the other thing that I wanted to touch on while I had Chris on here is the bullshit that he has had to go through, with the Social Security Department to try to, not so much get paid, but to get on disability itself, and what it has entailed for him. So if you'd like to try to describe some of the crap you've been through with Social Security.
Okay. Well, originally I tried to diagnose myself, but I'm going to tell you from experience, don't do that. They want actual proof, even if you know it, and then you end up giving them proof. They don't really care. Throw that out there. Make sure you get actual documentation from a medical professional before you try to claim that, because they're just going to give you a ton of crap. No. That being said, let's see. I've been in and out of the inpatient, as they call it, like 3 or 4 times now. I had talked to a psychiatrist a lot, but I didn't realize how much that cost. So I've seen my Medicaid or care or whatever that is. I've been fighting with them for almost 3 years now, even though they actually have factual information stating that I am schizoaffective, which pretty much means schizophrenic / a mood disorder. And then on top of that, they said I'm bipolar, have depression, and I have PTSD from professionals. And then I got the court case, right? And I'm talking to them, and they're asking questions, and I'm answering them. And I'm like, okay, so it's not going bad. Like this analyst was, they like, well, the analyst is going to make out bad things like work or whatever. Well, it, like for my case, when I was talking to him, like the analyst was like kind of like beating around the bush with the judge, and the judge was getting pissed. I don't know if that had any part to play in her decision, but and then the judge is like, no, can he work or not? The analyst goes, considering the information that he had been provided, no, he cannot work. And later I found out that they denied my claim. Then the lawyers tried to appeal it. They denied the appeal. Then the lawyers dropped me. Then I tried to appeal it, stating that I felt that they were being blatantly biased, despite the actual factual information in my medical files, and they completely disregarded my appeal.
Yeah.
So I looked into it, and apparently, as it turns out, and this is important for anybody that has bipolar disorder, just to let you know, according to the ADA, which is tied to the United States Supreme Justice, is actually legally classified as a disability. There is no medium ground, or it can be, or it may be. It just flat out is. That's important for people that have that to know that, because, like with my case, when I was trying to tell you, like I thought I may have found a loophole in your case. Like, well, if I'm automatically disabled by default for being bipolar, not even counting the other stuff, the fact that they said I was not disabled and threw out my case, in my opinion, clearly is an example of discrimination.
Sounds like it.
So yeah, I'm still fighting with that. I filed a complaint with the United States Supreme Justice on that. And yes, if I can sue them, I don't see. Here's the funny thing: people think it's about the money for me. No, see, it's about the principle. This system is there to help people that have problems, but that ain't the way the system actually works in reality. It helps people that don't have problems and kick people that have problems to the curb.
That's the government for you. Unfortunately, that is the government for you. And we should be okay, talking about the government, and factual statements, as long as we don't mention certain government, or, well, they're not even in the government anymore, but certain people. That way we don't get on their radar.
Yeah, I'll tell people, like, what are they going to do? Arrest me? Either way, or put me in jail? Either way, they'd end up paying for me. So it's a win for me. So go right ahead and put me in jail.
Oh, if they put you in jail and anything happens to you, just remember there's probably going to be a meme made about you that says Chris didn't hang himself.
Oh yeah. They can legally kill me now since it's not on record that I'm suicidal. They could just, he killed himself. I didn't even contemplate that. I was being honest and they asked the questions. I answered them.
Oh yeah.
I would assume my family thinks I'm making this shit up. I tell people, it's like, I am absolutely positively not making any of this up. I wish I was, but I am not.
Yeah, the things that you've told me over the years, and everything that you've been telling me that's been going on with Social Security and stuff like that. I mean, this is shit you just cannot make up. I mean, yeah, maybe if you sat down and did all the research on everything that you have talked about, if somebody else would sit down and do all the research, maybe they could, make it up. But, this is just some shit you can't make up.
And Will can attest to this. I told them that I hear voices that tell me to brutally murder people. Yeah, I'm not making that up. I really do.
But, then again, that could all lead back to the demonic oppression that you've actually been going through all your life.
Yeah, I was thinking that too. Like, maybe it's that thing whispering in my ear, because their whole concept of what their goal is to corrupt people and to get them to do things they don't or normally wouldn't do.
Right.
All I know is it's like, that's just your own thoughts. No. If you actually hear shit like that, there is a clear breakdown between, like, you got the good side over on your left, or bad, or however it goes, and then you got the other side on the right, and you can hear them debating about, should I do this? Should I not do this? And then I'm like sitting here debating between those two things, and all of a sudden a voice comes like out of the back of my mind from nowhere. It comes up with some extremely violent, horrible shit.
Yeah, I've actually not that bad before, but I've gone through some situations to where you got one side, talking, and then the other side starts talking, and then you're in the middle, like, "Hey guys, I'm here. You shut up. We're busy." Shit. Okay.
I'm just trying to explain to people that when they or see I mumble occasionally, but uh, they would classify it as this is like it's just your conscience talking. Like if you actually experience what I'm talking about in your mind, you can definitely tell the difference between your conscience and an outside source throwing shit at you.
Hey, but if you're hearing more than one voice at the same time, that's not your conscious. That's your conscious. Well, it may be your conscious, say, arguing with the demon that's riding your shoulder. I mean, you shouldn't hear two at the same time.
I would assume if I actually have an actual like demon that's either like in me, around me, or on my shoulder, as you say, I would assume there's a type of photography that they could use to see that.
Well, yeah, you can actually use just a regular digital camera to catch that. All you have to do is you standing in the dark and have somebody use a digital camera. But as for lighting, don't use, say, like infrared or a regular light. Get an ultraviolet lighting system. You can't see the light with your naked eye, but when you take a picture, it'll show up, and everything will be like light blue or light purple. And
Yeah,
if you're standing in a dark room and somebody takes a picture, they'll be able to see if anything is around you or near you. It'll be a shadow, an extra shadow that because ultraviolet doesn't pick up your shadow.
That would be interesting and terrifying if it looks like what I picture it looks like or remember.
All right, well, let's take a short break here. I want to pause it for a second, and then we'll get back at this. Hi, I just wanted to stop and just for a second and talk about one of my sponsors, and that's J. Wilson Services, LLC, Oxford, Ohio, 45013. If you'd like to get a hold of him, if you're around the Oxford, Ohio area, the number is 513-828-2487. And he is a really good electrician and can do pretty much anything that you would like him to do. So if you have a need for an electrician, give him a call. That's J. Wilson Services, LLC, 513-828-2487. And we're back. So off the air, you were telling me something about a murder tree.
Oh yeah, I had a dream. It was weird. It was hard to explain. Like, it's almost like how when you get deja vu, and you're just there. And you're like, wow, that's weird. Like, well, I had this drop into this dream world. I don't know if I might have asked projected. I don't know, but I seen this tree that had skeletons hanging off of it. The tree was completely dead. There was this female figure draped in a purple robe by a podium. And I'm looking around and I wonder what this chick was looking at, because she didn't have a face from my perspective, but she was looking down at this book. And I look at the book and I'm like, holy shit, that's the actual Necronomicon. You can see, dude, I can see that it was stitched in human flesh in vivid detail in the dream. It was creepy.
Welcome to another episode of Inside the Mind of Madness.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh,
I've had a lot of dreams like that. Like, I would like to write it off as I'm just dreaming, but it's hard to describe. Like, you have a dream, but you know when you're having a dream. Then it feels different when you're having a dream. You like, this doesn't feel right.
So lucid dreaming.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what it was. Like, I had this. It was a recent one I had. I was on this very vivid, like, vibrant color planet, right? And I'm running and I'm running and I see all these people scatter. I'm like, what the hell are they running for? I looked up and there's like a freaking like another planet that's colliding with this planet. And people are like, well, you must have had something that you were thinking about when you went to sleep to trigger this dream. No,
You didn't smoke some bad weed before that dream, right?
no, not at all. It's like that dream made no sense. Oh, speaking of paranormal, because I would assume religion, when you actually have an experience, it seems like that, like entity interfering, talking to you is kind of technically paranormal.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I had went to Meyer. Well, I'll just call it a supermarket. People don't know what that is because it's like kind of mainly a Michigan thing. So I had went to Meyer and my grandmother was dying at the time. Well, my aunt was giving me shit because she's pretty much psycho. There's no other way to word it. She's freaking way crazier than I am. Well, she had been driving me nuts. So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get away from her. I'm going to go to Meyer. I'm going to get some water, some food. And immediately upon walking out of the building, getting right by the vehicle, a guy pulls up in a truck, gives me a letter. It says, God is seeing your struggles and is proud of you. And it had money in it.
Huh.
I know. I don't per se believe in God, but the chances of that actually happening are pretty slim from a logical perspective.
Okay.
I just thought it was a weird event. Like, that's weird. Going through all this crap with my grandma, and all of a sudden this guy just gives me this letter with that. It says that had money. I was like, okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, so I was sitting here trying to remember how we actually got onto the subject of skinwalkers and shapeshifters and whatnot off the air. I can't remember. I can remember what I told you about my grandfather, but for the life of me, I can't remember how we got onto that subject.
I can't either.
I do know, on the other hand,
What were we talking about?
I don't remember what we were talking about, but I do remember that we had actually touched on watching the what you were asking, did I believe if things in movies or on TV or whatnot could cross over to you. And I remember telling you that about me sitting here watching the Ghost Adventures with Zach Bagans, the Demon House, and I was sitting here watching it, and I actually ended up with 3 scratches on my leg. I mean, my leg just started burning, and I thought, well, I had been scratching my leg earlier, but the way the 3 scratches were, they were perfectly spaced and all the way up my leg. And I told my wife about it. And I'm like, that's just kind of some creepy shit, but because there's nothing demonic in this house. It's just the only people ghosts or beings that would be in this house is my wife's grandmother and grandfather, Mike's stepfather or father, because he raised me, and then her old dog Hoot and our dog Gabby, and of course a couple of hamsters, birds, and stuff like that, but nothing demonic. And I just thought that was weird.
It also gives some relevance to what was in that house that I seen all those events in.
What's that?
If you took an animal in that house, it would completely freak out.
I remember what we were talking about now. We were talking about your friend Chloe and her talking about seeing werewolves.
Yes, from what she told me, I don't remember if she told the story or not, but the original story she told me, when she was a little kid, she could have swore she seen like someone go from like a man to a werewolf to a man.
Huh.
Yeah. And there's a lot of other weird crap that she says she's seen.
Well, we're definitely going to have to get her on here one day, and we can have I'll sit here and respond however you want, however the situation calls for, and you two can go through and talk, and maybe you can get her. Maybe you could astral project that thing again and get her to see it, live on the air, because that would be wicked for the listeners.
I'm gonna say something. I forgot what it was.
That's okay. It'll come back to you eventually. But I also remember talking about my grandfather when I was little. Now, you'd think that it should have messed me up really bad, but I've kind of been messed up all my life anyway. So it's like But there was something in the pasture out behind my grandfather's barn, and he's like, "Well, I'm gonna go check this out." So 70-some-year-old man was in immaculate shape. He'd worked on a farm and a ranch all of his life. Goes running up behind the barn. But before I finish, for people who are listening, so you don't think you probably think I'm crazy anyway, but not completely crazy. I'm full-blooded Cherokee. I grew up on the reservation in North Carolina, in Swain County, for anybody listening. So that, where the actual reservation is, not the tourist trap shit that's in Cherokee, North Carolina. But anyway, so he goes running behind the barn and takes a right behind the barn. And a couple minutes later, we're expecting him to come out the other side. Well, you can see the back of the pasture behind the barn, so he didn't run that way. And we don't see him, but a coyote runs out from behind the barn. So, and my grandmother just goes, "Well, there goes your grandfather." And I thought she was joking. And she goes, "Well, no, honey, come here and I'll take you up here." And we get up behind the barn, and on the ground is his clothes, but the coyote's long gone. And, people still talk about skinwalkers, and they try to say that skinwalkers are medicine men, but that's not true, because medicine men were for the good. They practiced the medicine wheel. Skinwalkers, on the other hand, were people who dabbled in black magic. And from what the Navajo actually say, skinwalkers are like 4 foot tall, really evil looking, with glowing red eyes.
It's also another interesting correlation between skinwalkers and witchcraft. Like, I'll say medieval witchcraft, if people have the perception of witchcraft type thing.
Yeah.
They both deal with, in order to gain power, you have to sacrifice a family member during Black Mass to gain power.
Let's don't say we did.
I'm just saying, I looked into that because I had this sneaking suspicion, because according to the actual story that led to that house being as messed up as it was, his wife had been practicing witchcraft, like I said earlier, right? And my suspicion was that she tried to kill her kids during Black Mass to gain power. And later, she said something horrible. She to my stepdad. He says, "I didn't plan on killing Christopher," which oddly enough, my stepdad's son had the same name that I do.
I'm not laughing at you, but
although his was Christopher Robin, mine's Christopher John, but the first name is the same. That alone's pretty interesting.
Hold up, back up. Christopher Robin?
Yeah, that was his, like Winnie the Pooh.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. Were they stoned when they named him?
They might have been. I don't know. He did smoke a lot of weed, so. What's really interesting is my stepdad even made comments about, like, he's seen shit too. He's screwing with me all the time. He's like, "Oh yeah, that happens all the time. Just ignore it." Like, what?
We'll call him Charles. Just don't even worry about it. Just forget about it. Or these are not the demons you are looking for.
Yeah. Who was that other person you said you were going to get on?
The guy that I was trying to get on earlier is Matt. He had a bunch of disturbing experiences in Arizona. Him and his sister. I don't. He told me the story once, but I don't really remember it. The only thing I really remember is him and his sister were in an area. I think it was around the Mogollon Rim or somewhere like that, and they had something watching them from a distance, just off in the shadows. And I don't know if it ever, like I said, he may have told me, but I just don't remember. It's been that long ago. It either walked out or they got closer and realized what it was and how tall it was, covered in hair. It was, and the way he described it, in my mind, it had to have been a Sasquatch, because I don't know of anything else that has, human-like legs and arms and standing upright, covered in hair, 10 feet or so tall.
Yeah.
Maybe a overweight, hairy basketball player, but
It's really interesting to think about it. You would assume people would be more scared of like Bigfoot because there's actually like witness accounts of actually seeing it.
right.
However, in my honest opinion, I think people are way more terrified of demonic entities or demonic. Excuse me.
Well, see, here's my whole question. I mean, as much as I have researched Sasquatch and investigated different reports and things, and as much as I've been around it all my life living on a native reservation, there's me and a couple of different medicine men and my grandfather and my dad and, several other people who have actually been leaning more toward, when somebody says, well, what do you think Sasquatch is? Well, honestly, I think it's a demonic entity. It's a physical, it's not a spiritual being. It's not, in and out of realities and everything. It's physical, but some demons can manifest themselves into physical beings and stay that way permanently. And the way the native stories go, the Cherokee stories and the Navajo stories and the Plains Indian stories and stuff like that were native stories. The only good Sasquatch is a dead Sasquatch, because of all the evil shit that they did. I mean, breaking into people's houses in the middle of the night, stealing kids, and people think those are just folk tales, and they're not. It actually happened. We have written accounts, or kidnapping women and doing unscrupulous things to women. And people would say, "Oh, well, that can't happen. That's not possible." Well, the Navajo Nation actually has accounts at the police station right now of things that happened from now all the way back to, say, the 60s, of women being kidnapped and raped and everything else, or molested, however you want to say it, by a Sasquatch. And not by a dude that was 6 foot tall or 7 foot tall, by something that was 10 feet tall, that's hands were bigger than a person's head. That's not a man, and for it to be doing something that evil, that's not just an animal that doesn't know any better. That's forward cognitive thought. That's thinking and planning to be able to break into somebody's house quietly and steal a child, cover the child's mouth or whatever, and get back out without being noticed. Now we're talking about in a hogan, and inside of a hogan, the hogan doesn't have rooms. There's just beds around the walls. For something to be able to sneak in and kidnap a child, or to go into, say, a woman's house and kidnap her and take her away, that's premeditated. That's a lot of thinking and planning involved. And for people to say that it's an animal, well, animals don't have that. Animals don't have, precognitive thought. They don't have the ability to plan it out. Even when a tiger is on the hunt, it's still not planned out. The tiger is just, it picks up a scent and it starts tracking. It's not like it sat down one morning and goes, well, I'm going to go get this deer and I'm going to set it this point. It just doesn't happen that way.
It was another interesting. It was supposedly a scary story that I had watched on YouTube, right? Which I don't know if the actual story has any factual reality to it. Like they said something about there was random occurrences of staircases that appear in woods that have no explanation.
Yeah, you keep talking. I'm gonna mute myself for a second.
But the interesting fact that they did point out because they showed like documentation of it on the screen of like how many people actually disappeared a year that go like on hiking trips into the forest. They don't mean like are killed; they just completely disappear. It's interesting because my brain goes, well, if they just completely disappeared, where did they go? Logic would dictate they can't completely disappear. That's impossible.
So anyway,
and you know, it's also interesting. They pointed out that they said a lot of the disappearances that actually happen in national parks are actually covered up a lot.
oh yeah, yeah. If you've never seen it before, you have access to Hulu well, not Hulu, but Vudu.
Yeah, I think I got that. I might have
Okay.
it on my phone.
Okay, so go to Vudu. If you have any, extra money or whatever that you could throw at, say, I think it's like $6.99 or something like that. Go to Vudu and look up Missing 411. It's by David Pilates, and it's 2 movies. And one of them actually talks about the little Dior Coons kid that went missing here in Idaho. I don't know how many years ago now. But and then the other one is the Missing 411, The Hunted. It's basically, like hunters becoming the hunted, and people going missing in national parks, or like the little Dior Coons kid did here, and them not being able to find him. And yeah, it's pretty interesting.
Oh, I also watched a recent thing that was interesting. I thought on YouTube they were talking about like you know how like they have the Atlanteans in lore.
Yeah.
Well, apparently there's a lot of places around the world that you would technically classify the thing that they're encountering as an Atlantean. Like they live in the ocean.
Yeah.
And there was a recent story that actually happened not long ago. They said this chick has completely disappeared, and she had came back like 3 or 4 years later, and they were talking to her, and she's like, her sister was asking her, "Is like, well, where were you?" She's like, "I was with these people in the ocean." People are like, "What?" The guy made a valid point in the video. He's like, "Well, look at it this way: what benefit would that person have to tell someone that story? Clearly, if you say a story like that, people are automatically going to assume you're crazy."
This is true.
He's like, so logically, that lady had no realistic reason to tell that story unless it actually happened.
Right.
I thought the whole thing was interesting because they pointed out there's a lot of cultures around the world that actually have versions of Atlanteans or beings that come from the ocean.
So I have a question for you, Chris. With everything that's happened to you in the past, and I've mentioned demonic oppression or possibly possession. What do you think actually happened?
In my honest opinion, I think something was targeting me because there's something about me that apparently they want.
Well, that's something that we're going to have to do a little digging on, and possibly find out for another episode. But for now, as I always say, I wish we could stay longer and see just how far the rabbit hole goes. But we're going to have to call it a night for tonight. But would you be interested in coming back on for another episode?
Sure, why not?
Got a whole lot of positivity in that one, but I'll take it.
Hey, hey, I'm not really a super positive person in my defense, so there's that.
All right. Well, I really want to appreciate you coming on tonight and sharing everything that you shared, and especially for sharing the details about Social Security and anybody that might be fighting that battle at this point in time.
Yeah.
Find us on the web at www.investigation-cryptoparalogy. That's CRYPTOPARAOLOGY.com. On Facebook at www.facebook.com/investigation crypto. Listen to us on any major podcast players, including Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and of course Spotify. We continue to spread to more podcast players each day. You may contact us by using the contact page on the website, or by sending a direct message to our Facebook page, or by emailing us directly at investigationcryptoparalogy@gmail.com. That is investigation, CRYPTOPARAOLOGY@gmail.com. Also, I would like to add this. If you're feeling down on yourself, or like you don't matter, or there's no hope left, we're here for you. You can contact us through our Facebook page or by emailing us at investigationcryptoparalogy@gmail.com. We are happy to listen and possibly help you find a better tomorrow. If you don't want to talk to us, you can contact the Suicide Hotline of the United States. They have a crisis text line if you verbally speaking to someone is not your thing. Text HOME, all capital letters, HOME, to 741741. If you do want to verbally speak to someone, the National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 1-800-273-8255. And if you are a veteran, you can also call 1-800-273-8255 and then press 1. Well, folks, that's all the time we have for tonight. I sincerely hope you will join us again next time for another spine-tingling, hair-raising experience from the depths of the abyss. If you would like to contact me about an experience you have had or to get on the show, email me at investigationcryptoparalogy@gmail.com. That's investigation, CRYPTOPARAOLOGY @gmail.com.
'Cause my monster's